Hello, I'm Dr. Daniel Friedland, the CEO of SuperSmartHealth, a company dedicated to empowering your health and well-being. In the last video, we spoke about the two main obstacles preventing you from reaching your highest level of health and vitality, connecting as fully as you like in your most important relationships, and unleashing your peak productivity and creativity at work, all of which we're referring to as peak performance. The first obstacle is feeling overwhelmed with stress, uncertainty, and self-doubt. And the second is struggling with a lack of clarity, strategy, or willpower to get to where you want to go. I want to share with you a solution that will empower you to break through these barriers and thrive with peak performance in your life, whether that's in your health, your relationships, or your work productivity, or all of the above. And then I'm going to show you a way to learn more so that you can feel calm, in control, empathetic, focused, energized, and productive. In other words, operating at peak performance. Before I share the solution, I want to first show you a solid foundation on which the solution is built. In a moment, you will understand how stress affects performance and the main asset you possess to optimize the relationship between stress and performance. So how does stress affect performance? If you graph out the relationship between stress and performance, with stress on the horizontal axis and performance on the vertical axis, what do you think this relationship looks like? When I ask this question to people in my programs, many think it looks like this, a straight line down. That is, when you have little or no stress, you perform at your best, but when you have high stress, you perform at your worst. But this is not the relationship. We've known since the early 1900s from the paradigm-shifting research by the psychologists Robert Yerkes and John Dodson that this relationship is a bell curve. What this curve reveals is that if you have a high level of stress, you have a low level of performance. You don't perform very well. But what's initially less intuitive is that if you have too little stress, or if you're bored, apathetic, or disengaged, you don't perform very well either. You operate at peak levels of performance when you have a sufficient level of stress or stimulation in your life without taking you over the edge. For example, have you ever noticed that when you go to a restaurant in an off-peak time, the service may be terrible, but when that very same restaurant is buzzing with activity, the service may be great. And if that same restaurant gets really busy, things start to go out of control and the quality of service plummets. That's an example of the peak performance curve. There's an optimal level of stress that drives peak performance. You may already be working the stress versus performance curve without even knowing it. For example, do you ever procrastinate on important tasks? Why do you do that? Why would you create the stress in your life? The answer is, you're motivated by some stress. As the deadline looms, your stress level increases and you release the stress hormones epinephrine and dopamine, which focuses your attention. This brings you up the peak performance curve from the left. And if you time things right, you find yourself in the zone getting things done at the peak of your performance. On the other hand, if you time things wrong and you're about to miss your deadline, your stress level can spike and you can quickly feel overwhelmed and have difficulty concentrating, causing your performance to plummet down the right side of the curve. Where do you feel you fall on that curve? Do you feel like you're operating below your peak on the right side of the curve due to high stress? Or maybe you're below your peak on the left side of the curve where you feel like you're underperforming because you aren't sufficiently challenged in your work, feel bored or stagnant. And how can you use this information about the relationship between stress and performance to help you drive towards your peak performance, where you can thrive and grow and embrace your challenges at the limit of what you can do? You need two broad skill sets to do this. The first are the critical skills and practices you need to know how to recover rapidly from stress when you're overwhelmed by it. The quicker you can recover from incapacitating stress, the faster you can regain a sense of clarity and control to improve your performance. This enables you to move up towards the peak of the curve from the right. The second are skills and practices to be able to clarify, focus, and engage in taking action in areas of your life that are most important to you. This enables you to challenge yourself at the limits of your capabilities, feel stimulated and energized, and find confidence and capacity to break free of your comfort zones and habits that may be holding you back. The result? Your performance moves up towards the peak of the curve from the left. In other words, as you increase your level of engagement with what's most important to you, you experience a healthy level of stress that can increase your level of satisfaction and performance. Now that you understand this relationship between stress and performance, let's talk about the one main asset you already have which can be leveraged to optimize this relationship so that you can effectively regulate your level of stress and focus on what's truly most important in your life to thrive with peak performance. So what is this asset? I'll give you a clue. It's also what causes you to become overwhelmed with much of your stress to begin with. This asset is your brain. Your brain is responsible for generating your stress, but it is also the source of the solution. And here's the solution to learning how to thrive with peak performance. If you know how your brain works, you can know how to better work your brain so that you can overcome the two main obstacles to achieving your peak performance. In other words, if you know how to better work your brain, you can first recover more rapidly from stress when you're overwhelmed by it, and second, find the clarity, strategy, and willpower to get to where you want to go. Knowing how your brain works empowers you with an understanding of why you sometimes react in unproductive ways that can undermine your attempts to get healthy, heal a broken relationship, or perform well at work, and how you can turn this around. By understanding why and how your brain reacts instinctively, you can learn how to recognize when it's happening so you can do something about it before it gets out of control. And it's that awareness itself that can start you on your path towards transformational change. But I'll get more into that later. So, if you want to recover more rapidly from stress and focus on what's truly important so that you feel energized, vibrant, focused, productive, and alive, then here's a brief overview on how your brain works so you can better work your brain. So what's going on in your brain when you're stressed? When you feel threatened, a survival-oriented part of the brain called the limbic system, here illustrated by the red circle, instinctively reacts with a stress response, subconsciously triggering fight and flight defenses that are meant to protect you from harm. Your limbic system responds in similar ways whether the threat is physical or psychological. And most of the stress we're talking about here is psychological, not fear for your physical safety. When you feel threatened by psychological triggers of stress, you may fight for control or take flight from anything that leaves you feeling out of control. When you feel threatened by self-doubt, you instinctively fight to prove self-worth or take flight from anything that triggers self-doubt. For example, just imagine you're in a meeting with your boss, and in front of your colleagues, she harshly criticizes the project you've poured your heart into over the last week, even challenging your competence. How do you feel? Does your heart start pounding, or do you break out into a sweat? Does your breathing get shallow, or do you get a pit in your stomach? Does it feel like you can't think clearly or process the information very well? And what about your behavior? Do you want to fight back to restore your self-worth by blaming others or saying something you'll regret later? Or do you want to take flight by storming out of the meeting, hiding in your office, withdrawing from the conversation, or maybe numb your emotions with a few stiff drinks? These fight and flight responses are subconscious, automatic reactions that have evolved to protect you. However, this state of reactivity, as we call it, can do more harm than good and cause problems over the long term. It can ravage your health, sabotage your relationships, and make you less innovative, creative, and productive at work. For example, research has shown that significant amounts of stress over time increases the risk of death by more than 90%, predicts divorce, and significantly reduces productivity at work. The effects of stress are enough to stress you out. Thankfully, there's another part of the brain that has evolved more recently to help you soothe your stress response, as well as think more clearly, consciously, and creatively, connect more fully with others, and make wiser decisions and respond more purposefully in any situation. We call this state creativity. This is the top part of your brain, the neocortex or new brain, shown with all of these folds, that is crucial for engaging more proactively and creatively in whatever you are doing. This part of your brain is largely responsible for your conscious awareness, your ability to weigh the present, imagine a better future, and create a plan of action to get there. Now here's the key to achieving peak performance. If you can learn to leverage your neocortex more effectively and reduce reactivity, you can drive peak performance. This applies whether you're talking about improving your health, your relationships, or your productivity at work. There's a critical part of the neocortex that is key to driving your peak performance. It sits at the front of the brain behind your forehead, shown in the green oval. This is your prefrontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex is key to helping you calm your limbic system and tap into what inspires you the most, to open you up to greater opportunities for creativity and fulfillment. In addition to soothing your limbic system, your prefrontal cortex is critical to your sense of empathy and compassion, your short-term memory that enables you to create novel associations and creatively refine your ideas, your ability to make good decisions, your willpower to follow through on the decisions you make, and your ability to step back to reflect on the thoughts and feelings you're having and how they mesh with your core values. This part of your brain enables you to pause before you act and engage with greater wisdom and purpose. With all of these important functions, you can see why you would want your neocortex to be in the driver's seat and why it's the key to empowering your peak performance in your life. This part of your brain is crucial to cultivating vibrant health, more deeply connected relationships, and greater meaning and productivity in the work that you're doing. Now here's what we've learned about some of the most remarkable findings in medical science in the past 20 years. You can learn skills and practices that will teach you how to better work your brain so that you can more effectively navigate stress and focus on what's truly important to achieve peak performance in all aspects of your life. You can learn how to recognize when you're spiraling into a reactive state, shift activity in your brain so that you can get out of reactivity quicker, improve your focus, clarity, productivity, and communication skills, increase your energy, vitality, and passion for what's most meaningful to you, more fully connect and deepen your most important relationships, and become more productive in your work to operate at peak performance. So to recap, the number one solution that will empower you to break through your obstacles and thrive with peak performance in your life, whether that's in your health, your relationships, or your work productivity, is this. If you know how your brain works, you can better work your brain to achieve your peak performance. Now you may be thinking to yourself, okay, this is great information, but how do I learn to better work my brain? Well, if you'd like to dig deeper and learn the scientifically proven skills and practices to transform your brain to achieve peak performance, I would be honored to be your guide and show you how. In my next video, I'll share with you a roadmap that includes 4 key steps to better work your brain so that you can more effectively navigate stress and thrive with peak performance in all aspects of your life. If you want to learn to go deeper and learn how you can feel less stress, more calm, in control, empathetic, loving, focused, energized, and productive, in other words, empowered to kick into peak performance at will, just click on the Learn More button below.